actually, I'm gonna ask again. The, does this shirt for married guys, like I'm married, right? Does the shirt get you any extra credit at all?
No, not really.
I'm not. You're not gonna get me to wear it then. Okay. So, Coach, I had a great time, just getting to know you and learning about you. And so I sort of want to retell your story, or have you retell it rather. So the interesting thing about you is obviously you're like well ensconced into the Texas boxing scene, but you're not originally from Texas. So if you wanna, or if you can, just take me through it a little bit, how the journey started for you and your family in coming to Texas.
Well, I was born in LaPorte, Indiana. My dad was training fighters, and we had a he had a fighter fight down here in Houston, and that's why we moved here. It was that he had, he liked it here. There was more opportunity here in Houston, so that's why we moved here.
And when you guys moved down to Houston, obviously, over your career, you've had an opportunity to meet and work with a lot of great fighters and trainers. Was it like that when you all moved down there, or did it become that way afterwards?
No, there was a lot of good fighters here, and trainers as well. And when my dad opened the gym, uh, most of the guys were training there. There was Holyfield, Meldrick Taylor, all those like main event fighters at that time were there training at the gym. So it was, it was definitely for me. It was being a sponge, and Ronnie Shields was training guys, Georgie Benton, Tommy Brooks, Don Turner, Jesse Reed. I know I'm going to miss a bunch of them. Emmanuel Stewart. Uh, I can't even think of everybody right now, just off the top of my head. But those were all legendary trainers. Angelo Dundee was down there for a while. I mean, it was pretty cool.
That's so crazy. So, what is it that brought I'm actually just trying to understand it because I know, like, for example, the main event, promotion and the fighters and all of that. I always thought they were located in the Northeast. Like, I think they're out of Jersey, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
What was it that brought them down to Houston?
I'd probably say the weather, because it's always warm here. It doesn't get cold, and you can train year round. So it gets hot, but I mean it's the heat is not as bad as the cold.
Yeah, and I didn't know. A lot of things are starting to click for me now because I always knew like Manny Stewart was tied to a lot of different trainers, and I always thought like regionally speaking, he's pretty far away from a lot of the trainers that mention him, but that's probably where a lot of the connections happen. So when was he down in Houston?
I'd say 90s, probably early 90s. He was. I actually I posted it the other day on my Facebook page. I've got a thing where it's got my dad, him standing next. They were hanging a banner. It said "Crunk Boxing with Bill Benton." So I had my dad's, and it's him and Emmanuel standing next to each other. So that's pretty cool.
Um, you might not. I don't know if you caught it, but the banner in my wall, it's actually dedicated to Kronk and specifically Manny. Um, he is a guy who, in all the people I've talked to, gets mentioned, especially if it's someone who's a trainer like in the 80s and 90s. Everybody gives credit to him for something that he did for them. It's like I don't know what the word would be, but he was a person for everybody in boxing.
He's a mentor.
Yeah. What was your experience? When you were around him.
Just he was a super nice guy, and I mean, he was always super. I was little. I mean, I was probably 10, 11 years old, but I just remember him being super nice to me. So
I mean, that you're talking like as far as trainers go, it's all boxing royalty and fighters for that matter, especially around that time frame. Those were the best of the best. And you said, you're a sponge. What were the things that you learned from these guys?
everything. You pick up stuff you don't want to do. You pick up stuff that they do. And a lot of times when I was younger, I thought I would knew everything. Of course, you realize the stuff they were doing works. So then you realize, okay, there's a reason this is doing, or you don't. You either pick it up or you don't. But I can remember a lot of stuff they did that I look at now, and I'm like, well, that's why they were doing that. That's why, So that was part of it.
What would be, excuse me, what would be like a simple example of something that they did that nobody would really think of, like something you noticed, just in general?
Well, as Holyfield got older, they did less and less workouts, and I didn't realize. I thought, well, they're not training hard enough, But and then you watch him fight, he was still great. So the longevity was there because they didn't overtrain him. They didn't push him so hard as he was older. As you get older, you can't. And I'm doing that now. As I get older fighters, I tend to like slow down a little bit. All right, take this day off, or And I was with Teddy Atlas one time. I worked cuts for him when he was training Povetkin, and I like to ask a lot of questions. And he told me one time. He said, "The best workout is the workout you don't do."
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Did he elaborate on that, or was it just a very
Yeah,
pointed?
it was. I understood what it meant. He meant like you can always do an extra workout, but the workout you don't do is allows your body to recover so you can have the next day. That's a big part of what I do now. Trying to slow guys down. Because fighters they always feel like they're not doing enough.
That's interesting. I've heard mixed things. There are some. Obviously, everyone's different. Every fighter's going to be different. But I've heard examples of fighters who, I don't want to say they're being lazy. I don't want to disrespect a fighter by saying that, but they want to do a little bit less. Specifically with sparring, they'll say, "Hey, I don't think it's a good idea to spar today," and the trainer has to sort of push them. Have you had that experience, or
Oh yeah,
all your?
there's those guys that need it. That need to be pushed. That's learning. Some of these guys need to be pushed. Some of them need to be slowed down. The great ones are the ones that always you have to slow them down. The ones that really don't make it, if you constantly having to push them, a lot of times it doesn't work. And
Yeah.
and the real ones want to spar every single day. That's
Yeah.
they love to spar. So we spar 3 days a week, and then sometimes, if I feel like they're getting too sharp too soon, I'll tell them we're not sparring tomorrow, or that's, like I said, trying to slow them down.
And so that's an interesting thing. So when you say too sharp too soon, it looks like they're starting to maybe peak, like 3-4 weeks into camp. But wouldn't that be a good thing? And then just keep them going at that speed?
No, because you get to a point where you're just going downhill, and then you get to the fight, and you've spent it in the gym. You want to be going uphill when you get to the fight, not get to that peak 3 weeks before the fight. And you start coming down. I've seen it happen. It just the guys just can't pull the trigger. They can't, and most of the time it's because you went overboard. You've spent the good days in the gym when you want to use it in the fight.
Is that where that saying comes from, where a guy's a gym warrior? They're like, yeah, he's a gym warrior, but he can't get it done in the ring.
No, I don't think so. I think that's a mentality. I think some people just can't. They can't adjust from take it to the gym to the fight. Because I have had a bunch of those guys. I was like, wow, this guy, if he could take it to the fight, he'd be world champion, no doubt. But they just, when they get to the fight, something happens. That's the mental part of it. And I wish I could figure that out. And I'm trying, because I would be, you could make everybody turn the corner then.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of this is psychological. A guy peaking isn't necessarily his body like failing him. It's him mentally getting to a place that he needs to be and falling off. And same with a guy who's a gym warrior. Maybe I don't know either. I'm like spitballing, but I'd imagine it's got to be a psychological thing of performing when it matters. It's something along those lines.
Definitely, the mental aspect is huge. Guys that You got some guys. I mean, look at James Toney, a guy who really didn't train that hard, but he could beat anybody on any night. So how does he do that?
Well, and guys like that, that must kill a regular fighter's confidence when you see it, when you're working so hard and you see that guy. Or like, there are special athletes like that, like a Lawrence Taylor in the NFL. He'd be
Yep.
like partying all night and come in and still be the best player on the field. It's like, how? How is he doing
Yeah.
this?
You just never know. It's those guys are. They always say, and I tend to I say it sometimes too. Like, what if that guy did everything right? Maybe he would have been the same guy. Maybe you like to think that if he did everything right, he would be really, he'd be the greatest ever. But maybe not. Maybe that was as good as he was going to get.
I agree. And I always wonder too, like maybe certain people just operate a certain way. I mean, it's just the way it is. Like you look at like other sports like hockey and baseball. In the old days, they were having beers after the game. They were smoking
Right.
cigarettes in between innings.
Yeah.
They played just fine.
Right.
Like these guys were good. So I don't know. I mean, obviously times change. Athletes now seem to be overall sharper than they used to be, but I think boxing's the one where perhaps it's gone the other way. I feel like the old school mentality was extremely disciplined, always isolated training. They wouldn't, let them see any women. That was like one
Of
of the
course.
oldest ones.
Yeah, Marciano. They used to lock him up for 6 months.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's funny.
yep. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's funny because the guys who were like the real players or whatever, they'd have them training in the city, and they'd have to sit in front of their door to make sure they didn't leave the room.
Yep. Yeah, and then the letters from his wife, they would read them before they gave them to him. Could you imagine trying to do that today? Like it'd be crazy. Like you're gonna read and so because they didn't want any mushy, they didn't want any like lovey-dovey stuff. They didn't want him to read that. They wanted him to be tough and hard. And so,
Yeah.
but nowadays it's like there's no way you could do that.
I think I do you feel like, and then maybe this has never been a thing for you, but one thing a lot of the trainers have said is that you always want to keep a fighter, focused and you want to be able to control the camp. So ideally, you don't want too many outside voices coming in and because people just have 100 opinions. You have 100 friends, that's 100 opinions, and they get in your head. Do you feel like in the old days that was something that probably didn't happen because of the amount of control they had?
1,000%. Yeah, there was no. I mean, I was around watching. You would never go talk to another fighter, while he's training. But now, like, it's just, I mean, from every aspect. So managers, matchmakers, these booking agents now, they get on Facebook and they contact the fighter directly. It's crazy. Like, and I mean, you couldn't, you get cussed out or get in a fight doing that, or trying to talk to a fighter while he's in the gym. Like, I've seen trainers, get in a fist fight over it. You're not supposed to say anything. But now it's the guys bring their friends in. It gets chaotic sometimes.
Is there That's a real question here. Like, there's got to be something. I mean, you've established yourself, so it's probably a little bit different for you. But I feel like being a trainer, there's always got to be some anxiety of what's going to happen fight to fight, because typically there isn't a contract. The fighters do have a lot of people in their ear, and you don't. This is my own experience when I was managing a fighter, but you really don't know who you can trust. Have you? I mean, is that a thing for all trainers, or is it something like how does that affect you?
No, I mean, we've got a tight crew. Like, I've got my guys in the gym: Aaron Navarro, Chris Hernandez, Dwight Pratchett. We've got, just our little crew, and we stay tight. But and if a fighter wants to leave, it's of course I'll be upset, but it's part of this game, and I watched, I've learned from my dad that, I mean, I remember he would get so upset, but I'm like, I don't get to that point. I can be upset one day, and the next day I'm like, all right, get up, go to work. It's back to back to the grind. Don't even think about it. Just go right back to work.
I mean, obviously, and you and I had kind of talked about this before. I think that your disposition and mentality is really good because a lot of us, and this is outside of boxing, this is like all over. Everybody seems to want to control things more than they can, worry about things you can't control, and allow that frustration to carry into other aspects of like forward in time and other aspects of your life, right? So like, is that a an intentional thing that you do that you thought about going into training to just not get so tied to those aspects of it that could be frustrating?
I think because I was raised in this business, I saw everything happen, and so nothing really surprises me, And there's nothing you would say to me like you ain't gonna believe this, and I
Yeah,
wouldn't, I would definitely believe it. So that, and I think it's just my demeanor is like that. I'm I try to just not that I just can't. I'm not gonna wake up every day and be like, damn, he left me, or I'm getting up the next day and I'm going to work like as if I did, if he was with me or not. I'm getting up 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to the gym. Like, nothing changes. So you try to stay level. Stay like this. Don't get too high on the highs and don't crash too hard on the lows because it'll kill you. And if you get too high and then you have to have a crash right afterwards, that's probably one of the worst feelings you can have. And but I do hate to lose. Don't
yeah,
get me wrong. But I mean, I really I hate to lose more than I like to win. So I mean, I'm a sore loser, but I don't let it kill me. I'm not gonna lay in bed and not go to the gym, and it's not that's not gonna happen.
absolutely. Um, when you talk about the tight knit culture of the gym, obviously cultures don't happen by accident. There's typically it's either intentional or it's everything was handled a certain way where it ends up a certain way. How did your gym culture get to a point where everybody was so tight knit? And it sounds like you probably have a lot of leaders, in that gym as well.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of happens. It's they the bad apples they weed themselves out. So it does. They never get to that point where they're affecting the gym. They'll be run out of there pretty fast. So there's never a where everybody's like, damn, I hate that guy, or it's not. He's gone before that happens.
Yeah. And do you feel like that has a lot to do with the fighters that you work with? Working with a very specific type of fighter and maintaining that standard?
I think so. I think part of it's that. But I have all kind of different guys. They're all not the same. They're all different. So, but they all have respect and I mean, at the highest level, you've got like Shock comes in the gym. He's still like it's crazy the stuff he does. Like he'll come in some nights and just start working with an amateur kid, and the kid's on cloud nine. He's like,
Yeah.
because I mean, he got a world champion, just no big deal. He's just showing, now do this, try this. It's like it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see.
So he loves boxing. It sounds like.
He definitely loves boxing. It's everything about it. I think he loves.
Um, one thing that you do that I respect a lot, and I thought it was great, but you helped me understand it much more, is running with your fighters. So, a lot of coaches, that'd be a pretty big task, right? I mean, physically, it's very exerting. It's very time consuming and all of this, but you invest that time to go and do the road work with your fighters. What did you notice were the positives that come from that and the opportunities that come out of doing the road work?
A lot of different things. I mean, I'm there doing it with them, so I think at that point they're like, okay, he's here grinding with me. He's sweating. They're sweat with together. And the other part is like when we're on log runs, they open up. They talk to you about their life and not just about boxing. Just in general, you learn a lot because you're there together for a while. So you get to understand what they think or how they think or what went on in their life, how'd they get to this point. So And I think they need that sometimes. They need, not all of them, but a lot of them need to talk and kind of get it out, because they're so. It's weird. Fighters are for as tough as they are, they climb in the ring half naked and beat the shit out of each other. They're a lot of them are insecure, but they'll battle like that, but then they have insecurity. So you learn that part about it, and then you learn to deal with it.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. So the first thing I think that comes from that is that they're opening up and having the ability to trust you with, things that are privileged to them that they probably don't share very often. But then when you make that connection and tie to that part of the fighter, is there anything to do with that information then as far as motivating them or finding out like what matters to them and then coaching to that?
Definitely, every little thing matters. It's and like you just said, if figuring it out is once you figure it out, if you can use it to fuel them, I mean you're that much better.
Awesome. Yeah, you had told me, I thought it was kind of funny because you're a very calm, balanced person, as we've already kind of talked about. You did say, hey, if I need to get mad, that'll happen. I'll blow my top when it needs to happen. What is it, what is it, you're a very calm guy. What does it take to get you to a point where you're going to, in boxing terms, what does it take to get you to a point to blow your top?
Uh, I guess knowing when would I lose it, knowing what a guy like. I get upset with lazy. Like to me, I can't. I hate lazy people. Like it's not hard to be to not be lazy. It's like it's just work. So lazy gets to me sometimes, especially if I know a guy's got a lot of talent and he's lazy. I'm like, man, you're just wasting. So I've had moments when I've lost it. You know, telling him you got to work harder. You can't be. That's probably the only time I really lose it. Or when I'm challenged, like as a trainer, like these little games and stuff. I protect my fighter, and I'll battle. I don't care. Like I'm there for my fighter. I don't care what anybody. I don't care if it's a commission or who it is. I'll battle with them. I don't. We can sit and And those are times when I have lost it. Like for example, Shock was fighting in California, and the opponent's gloves. We were checking the gloves, and I grabbed the gloves, and there's zero padding in them at all. And this happened. This happened more than once with Shock. It's crazy.
Oh my
So
God.
I'm like, so I said, He's not using these gloves. So then the inspector was there, and he's like, well, you're disputing the. I said, I'm not disputing anything. I said, he's not wearing these gloves. I said, well, we're not fighting him in these gloves. Look, there's zero padding. I could take my finger and touch, literally feel the other side. Like if I did like this, I could feel the other side of the glove. And so then, the next day, the head of the commission came down. Oh, actually, he came down that night. He grabbed the gloves. He goes, oh, he's not using these. Don't worry. We'll get him something else. I said, okay, no problem. So then they come down, and there was another pair of gloves that that we didn't want him to use or something. And so I'm sitting there, and now we're going back and forth, arguing, battling, and they're like, oh, you're making it about you. I'm like, no, I'm protecting my fighter. Like, it's not about me at all. So they, then they end up using. I think they end up using our other pair of gloves, which is fine. I mean, let's just be on even playing grounds. I don't want no advantage, but I don't want no disadvantage either.
Absolutely. I gotta stop there though. I don't understand how the commission can't catch. They should be
They
all
signed
over
off
that.
on it. The inspector had signed off on it. I was like, they had already signed all the fighter and the inspector. So when I'm checking them, I'm like, hold on, you guys signed off on this. Like, it's okay. And they, but I wasn't gonna let it happen.
Yeah. And then there's clearly tampering with that. I wonder if the gloves were tampered with after signing off on them, or if they're already on his hands. I
No, no,
don't
no.
know.
Oh,
Oh, it
this
wasn't on
was
his hands. It was the night
before
before.
the fight. This is
Yeah.
at the weigh-in. Yeah, so this was way before the fight. So they sent them like that. So whoever, I don't know if they got them early and then they, packaged them themselves or what, but it was I wasn't going to let it fly though.
Yeah, I mean that's terrible. That's how guys get seriously hurt in the
Of
ring.
course.
When mistakes like that happen and someone's exploiting them, like that's. I'm glad you caught it, but that's sickening to hear. I can't believe that. Um, so we went down that rabbit hole. I'm trying to go back a little bit here. So, um, when you what is the point of training with a fighter where you decide it's time to hit that switch and have that heart to heart conversation when they're being lazy and that is it does it take maybe a week to 2 weeks into training camp, or is it something you notice day 1, 2, 3?
No, typically it's not. Typically it'll be like for somebody that's I don't want to say like how I say it, but it won't be like somebody in camp because I won't even let them get into camp if they're that
Yeah,
lazy. So it'll be somebody that I know can do something, but kind of halfway trains and doesn't show up all the time. That's usually what kind of every now and then I'll just kind of like it'll blow my head. Like what are you doing? Like, and I won't let them waste. I always tell them I'm not gonna let you waste my time. Like, you either do it or you don't. But it's sad to watch you not do it.
yeah. So there's still a part of empathy to it. Like, hey, I care about how you're going to
Of
do, and
course,
this is not enough.
of course, absolutely.
How many times or how successful are they after that conversation? I mean, everyone's different, but do you ever have anyone who comes back and they really flip that switch?
Yeah, yeah, I have, and I've had a bunch that didn't. So
Yeah, 50%'s not bad. Or I
yeah,
mean, any portion is good because I think a lot of times when it comes to effort, there are different trains of thought, but there are some people that think if someone's not putting forth an effort, they just don't have it. They don't have that ability that's needed to continue to succeed. So
yeah.
it's worth taking that opportunity to at least give them a shot. Um, I had asked you before, what is it that you look for? When you see a new fighter and you think, does this kid have it or not? What are some of the things that you look for?
The first thing is the fight. Do they have fight in them? Because that's if they don't have the fight in them, they're not going to make it. Not that you can't get it and develop it over time, but if they don't have that like to get beat up and come back the next day, then they're not going to make it. Or if they're coming in like guys they get beat up and then they come, oh, I can't spar today, I forgot my mouthpiece. And so that kind of stuff is I mean it's you just they have to have that, they got to have that drive to keep going forward, not to quit just because you got beat up one day, because everybody's been beat up in the gym.
That's that's really interesting. I think that's a lot of like Teddy Atlas has said that about fighters before, where he's like, yeah, they're really talented and their talent can get them here. It's like, but what happens if they're in a fight? It seems every fighter gets himself in a fight at some point where they're going to start getting hit and they have to find a way to respond when they're getting the worst of it, or like you get knocked down or something, some adversity comes. Have you ever had it where a guy has been able to sort of make it past that radar? He's talented enough, he's slick, he doesn't really get hit, he's not tested. Like, has that ever happened where someone was able to sort of keep going until one day you notice, like, oh, there's something, the fight isn't there in them?
mm, I mean, to an extent, not at the highest level though, because you get exposed when you get to the top level. But to a certain extent, yeah, you got guys that are good athletes that they're going to beat certain guys no matter what they do because they're better athletes. But then when they get to that high level and they get to an even playing field, a lot of times that's when they get exposed.
Um, is there a part of you that feels the need to maybe put them in really tough in sparring at some point just to see like what they're really made of? Take the governor off and see like, hey, they're gonna get hit in the sparring session. Let's see if they do respond to that.
Yeah, we do that anyways. That happens every day in the gym. Everybody, all the guys in the gym are. I mean, we got a bunch of real fighters, so there's no, the upcoming guys are wanting to climb in there with the champions. There's no, there's nobody running from work at our gym. Everybody wants to get better, and they want to be tested themselves. So that kind of shows, they hold themselves accountable.
Yeah, I think it comes back to having some leaders in the gym, and when you have guys, when your best fighters are your hardest working fighters, and they have a ton of heart and fight and grit. It sets an expectation as soon as you walk in the gym of what it's going to be here. There's nobody to skate by. Everyone here is here to fight. And it kind of comes back to that, like a gym culture. It seems like a lot of it is predicated on having the right leaders in a gym, and maintaining that high standard.
Definitely, 100% right.
So when you came into boxing, obviously, born into boxing. I shouldn't say came into boxing. I mean, it's your whole life, right? So, but when you come into training, your dad brings you out to Houston, and you're surrounded by just absolute geniuses of boxing. What were some of the things you learned? You don't have to name I would never want to disrespect any of the coaches, but what were some things that they did that you got away from thinking maybe it wasn't the best approach?
Um, hmm. To me, why there were some trainers that were not as good as I thought they were. They just that kind of stuff, like just kind of, I don't know. I don't know how to say it, but
Yeah.
they're not. They weren't hardworking trainers. They weren't. Not that their mind was obviously these guys had a bunch of world champions. So, but just not as driven as I want to be. So I would. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to just sit on a chair and just watch you work out and not. I mean, I'm a hands-on guy, and I think I'm always going to be like that.
Yeah, that's interesting because I'll say this. You had mentioned Angelo Dundee, and I'll say it, you don't have to validate it or not, but I do recall, later in his career, great trainer, by the way, great boxing mind, but he was so big that he would show up like the week of the fight, or he'd show up for the fight without training the fighters as much beforehand. And to me, I just didn't think that that was logical. I just thought I didn't, and it's not to call him out. I mean, he's a legend,
Right.
but I do feel that you have to do all this stuff throughout the training camp to develop a pattern with your fighter and communication and a game plan. I thought it was crazy to sort of show up and be like, all right, we're ready to fight. Like that to me is why the person who's training him for all those weeks should be the one going in there, probably not somebody else. So I'm just making an observation there, but I get where you're coming from.
But so for me, Dundee was a great corner man too, though. So him just being in the corner was a plus. So he just, if you brought him in the day of the fight, he could make the difference sometimes. So yeah, I get what you're saying. He should have been there, but sometimes a great cornerman can make a difference in a fighter too.
To me, it always seems like all the work is done before the fight, though. On the day of the fight, what more can a guy do if he wasn't part of the plan?
He's having an eye for what's going on in the fight. That's definitely what he can do. That's a big part of anything. It's even more important because when the fight's going on and you've trained a certain way and something goes different, you've got one game plan. You got to be able to talk to the fighter and make adjustments. And sometimes an outside, especially with a guy like Dundee, who's you got to respect him. He didn't have all those fighters, those champions for nothing. So I mean, him having a vision on it,
Yeah.
is definitely makes a difference.
So, what do you think makes a trainer just so sharp to be able to come into a fight and literally create value the day of the fight and be able to work on the fly, communicate it to a fighter that they haven't necessarily worked with. So they're able to communicate it very clearly and change a trajectory of a fight. What does it take for a trainer to be at that level?
Experience. You know, you have to have experience in every situation. You know, I mean, you've had to work with winners and losers.
Yeah.
You know, that's to figure out what to do and what not to do. But the experience is the big part, and just having a vision for it. Some guys don't. Some guys are just, you got to do this. This is what you have to do. Keep doing this. Don't change. You know, but sometimes in a fight, it starts going downhill, and then you got to readjust. You know, and some fighters, you know, and even having a great coach sometimes doesn't work either. You know, they might be telling you to do something and you can't do it. But I think there is a plus from having a guy with experience like that that like you said, can adjust on the fly and get through to the fighter too.
And you know, for a fighter to adjust, you know, I'm an outsider. I've never worked a corner, right? I watch it on TV, you know, so I see it the day of, and you hear a commentator, and this happens all the time. You know, a guy starts losing the fight, and it's like the trainer will give him specific directions, and the guy will go out and do the same thing again. The most common one you start to notice is when somebody isn't being aggressive and they're falling behind on the scorecards, and it's like, look, this guy's out punching you, and you're not, you know, countering. You're not doing anything to bring the fight to him. But like in situations like that where a fighter isn't listening for whatever reason, what's the approach at that point? You know, if you're in a 10-round fight, it's round 4, and for the 4 rounds he hasn't executed the game plan. What do you as a trainer? What goes through your mind, and then what do you have to do to help him at that point?
Uh, for me, it's always just treat him like a man. You know, treat him. You know, like with respect. At the same time, let him know the truth. Because you know you can sit and tell them, you know, like you're doing good, or and they keep doing the same thing, or but if they're not doing good and it's not working, you definitely gotta talk to them, try to make them adjust. But and learning your fighters how you do that, you know, like you said, you know, figuring out what fuels them, how you get them to do stuff, and you know, trying to get them adjust. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just fall into that trap, and they keep doing the same thing over and over.
Something just registered in my head as you're saying that. You said you worked as a cut man for Povetkin with Teddy.
Yes.
Wasn't that the fight where he pulled the cell phone out? Am I crazy? That
No.
wasn't the cell phone fight, was it?
No. No,
But
he fought Cedric Boswell, I think it was. We were in Finland. Yeah, literally one of my buddies was working cuts and he couldn't go, so he called me. He goes, "Hey, can you get on a plane tonight?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I jumped on a plane, flew out, landed. I landed at night, and then you know, got to the room, went to sleep, woke up. We went and hung out, ate, and then went to the fight, worked the fight. That was it.
Boxing is such an unexpected, spontaneous thing for all you guys on the inside of it. What's like the craziest thing that's happened to you in boxing where you're like, you said you're surprised by nothing, but there had to have been something where you're like, what the hell?
Mm, a guy jumped out of the window at the gym, 2-story building, to not spar one day. That's one of the crazy stories I always tell.
What the fuck? What? Oh
So
my gosh.
it was a guy who used to come to the gym. He's an amateur fighter, but good. Like I worked in pads with him. We trained. He was really good. He had 5 or 6 amateur fights, and so every day he would I would tell him you're sparring tomorrow. He wouldn't show up. So I was like, all right, I got to catch him coming in, you know. So he's walking in, and he walks in, and I said, "Hey, you're sparring today." He goes, "All right." So he goes back to the locker room. I'm working pads with somebody in the ring, so there's no way out. Like there's only one door out the gym, you know, at the time. And so I'm standing there, waiting on him to come out. and like 30 minutes goes by. And so I walk in the locker room, he's gone. And I'm like, it's like it's a little bit higher than 2 stories from the window down.
Oh my
So I'm
God.
like, I'm like, I'm walking out. I walk out and I'm like looking like kind of like I go look at my face like, where the hell is he? Right. So my Chris Hollywood, he goes, who are you looking for? And I said, so and so. And he goes, he left. I said, no, he couldn't have. I said, he went back in the locker room. He didn't come out. He goes, bro, he was running to his car when I got here. He said,
Oh my God. He didn't break his legs or anything?
nah. So,
Wow.
yeah, it was that was one of the crazy stories. Like I was like, all right, there's nothing gonna surprise me.
The things that people will do to not have to like fight is crazy. The fight would have been easier than jumping from 2 stories. That is so crazy. This poor
That's
guy.
yeah, yeah. No, it's. I mean, he just told me no, I don't feel like sparring it. That's it. But
He just
he's
wanted to
got
keep his. But even then, you're gonna find out he left. He could have just walked out the front door. You know.
yeah. Or just say I gotta go. I gotta like make something up. But whatever. He didn't do that.
It's quick thinking, man. Quick thinking on the fly. um, Man, that's probably the craziest story you could have told. That's insane. Did he ever come back?
Yeah, he came back like a couple months later, and then he would walk up the steps and kind of peek. There's a brick wall. He would kind of peek over the wall to see if anybody was sparring. If they were sparring, he'd leave, But then if they weren't, he'd walk up and get his workouts. So
Oh my goodness! Why
yeah,
didn't he just not? Why not just not box then? Like,
easy. I mean, listen, you never know what people what's going through their mind, but for me, I'd just be like, I'm not fighting. I'm not getting hit. Like if I don't want, that's it. It's that simple.
yeah, no doubt. That is wild. Um, oh gosh, that totally threw me off. I wasn't expecting something like that. That's nuts. You're very passionate about boxing. It's clearly something that is so important to you, and you love it. How? Let me change the question. Actually, what are the things that? Was there ever a time where you thought like, "Hey, I don't want to do this," or boxing isn't working for me, or have you always had this steadfast love and passion for it?
No, I love it definitely. I still love it, and if I don't want to do it, I'll do something else. But I still enjoy I really enjoy I love everything about it. I love building a fighter, starting them from 4 round fights, getting them to the 10 round fight, and then the funnest part for me is the big fight, like the camps, like the studying. I love watching film on guys. Like I'll watch if they post them working hand pads. I'll watch that. Just not that I'm going to use any of it, but I like to study and see what I can get out of it.
Do you think you're saying like not that I'll use it, but do you think just by watching the opponent too, perhaps you just get familiar with them, you start to understand their rhythm and their patterns, and sort of you'll maybe through osmosis you sort of pick up a lot of things that you're not necessarily intentionally looking for.
Definitely, you definitely pick up. For when I was younger, I would watch the film and try to break down every little thing, mistake, this, that, But it was I was overdoing it, and so now I just watch. I watch a bunch of videos. I watch every fight I can on them, and then just try to pick out one thing that we can capitalize on. Not not 10 things, because it never works like that. Every time I've done that, it's always been a failure. I always thought, because you got the fighter overthinking. The fighter still has to fight his fight, but if you can capitalize on one thing, it can make a difference.
Is it a challenge when you notice a lot of things? Maybe you see a lot of tendencies, a lot of opportunities from watching film. But you're also very steadfast in keeping this simple and communicating it effectively. Especially, this is boxing. You get 1 minute between each round. You have to communicate within a minute. Is it ever hard for you to say like, man, I'd like to also talk about A, B, and C over here, or is it you're just very comfortable and controlled in the process?
Yeah, I don't want never overdo it. I don't ever want to. I don't. You can. I don't know. You can confuse the fighter, and I've done it. That's the problem. I've been through it. So that's like I said, experience. You make mistakes, and then you figure it out. So, but no, it's just try to keep it. Try to keep it simple.
When when you're picking out sparring for a fight, say it's a big fight, a very specific styled opponent, is the and maybe this is a dumb question, but is the goal to try to find the closest match to the potential opponent, or do you look for other strengths that the opponent has to sort of focus on it? Like the guy has a big right hand. Do you focus on someone with the biggest right hand, to plan for it, or do you try to find like a perfect copy of that fighter?
There's never a perfect copy, but just similarities. If a guy's fast, you want quick work. If a guy's slow and strong, you want that. It's. But that's the great thing about our gym is we have every single kind of style. We can with sparring. So we're kind of in house. We don't have to. I don't have to go out looking. Can we bring this guy in? Can we do this? We usually got something similar. In the gym, so it works out good.
Right on, and that actually made me think of something else. Being able to you're packed at your gym, but Texas is pretty full with good fighters. You have other gyms with really good fighters. How important is it to maintain good relationships there and not let pride get in the way in sort of working with other gyms?
I got no problem going to other gyms. I'm always respectful, because it's you never know what you're going to need. You may need somebody, so you want to treat them just like you want to be treated. So that's there's almost every gym in Houston I can go to, or even Texas, and if I needed to bring somebody over to do some work, it wouldn't be a problem, and vice versa. Most of the guys, and there's some guys that can't come to my gym, but
Oh no,
for the most part, most of the guys are pretty respectful. So
awesome. And a guy who's been mentioned. I think he's been mentioned already in this interview, but Shock is somebody that you're clearly very high on. You know, how do you coach a guy with such a high boxing IQ like him?
leave him alone. I just, for the most part, I only tell him when he's making mistakes or if he's working on something. A lot of times I'm just telling him have fun, like, cause he gets locked in and then, he's almost too dialed in and then I'm like, hey, remember to have fun in there. And then he's like, and that came from him telling me, man, remind me to have fun. So, a lot's what he does is it comes from him. He knows what's going on in there better than I do. So, because he can do stuff in there that I wouldn't let most guys do.
And that's a great point. So you're very big on not necessarily always telling the fighter, but asking questions to understand the why behind their logic or what they're looking for. Well, what's the importance of asking why, or how do you use that in your training?
Well, I mean, everybody's different, but I like asking questions why, just to see if they got understanding. Because a lot of times you ask a fighter why he did something and he can't tell you. He'll just be like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, well, then don't do it. Like if you don't have if you can't explain to me, why you're making a mistake in there, then we're not doing that. Like Shock could do something and be like, he'd be like, well, because he was doing this right there, and I saw this coming at me. Like it's crazy how he explains it, and it's like, all right, that's when I started to like, I had to learn him, but I figured, all right, just leave him alone, just let him do his thing, and if he's making a mistake, tell him. And it's been pretty simple with him.
I feel like that would be a challenge having to keep it simple. Well, it's simple. You should keep it simple, but having to sort of step back and do less with somebody. That to me sounds like the pressure's always on everybody to do more work, to find new opportunities in every field, not just boxing. So I think it's always hard for people who are very focused and driven on finding more results to sort of say like, hey, it's time to step back. Is that ever hard for you, or is it something you had to learn how to do at some point, or?
Yeah, definitely I had to learn it, but realizing it was easier for me just to cheer him on or tell him when he's doing something right or tell him when he's making a mistake. It's really simple, it's for me it's easy. But guys with ego, there's a lot of trainers with egos. They want to tell you something just to tell you something, and it's I'm not like that. I don't listen, if I can sit in the corner and we're winning the fight and I don't have to say anything, that's the easiest thing. I just sit over there and just talk trash, it's that I can do that. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I don't have to like yell 200 different things, scream in your face, spit, slap you, do all that. That's, to me, it's all crazy. It's like a guy's in a fight and you got these trainers that slap the fighters is out of it. I'm like, you're getting hit in the head. Now you're going to slap the fighter. Like, it's wild to me. But it happens. And some guys have results from it, but I can't do it.
Yeah. I think a big part of that too is knowing yourself and knowing your fighter and understanding the disposition that you two have and how you can affect them, right? I mean, also not all fighters, someone had said this before, not all fighters are made for all trainers and not all trainers are made for all fighters. I can't imagine slapping Shock would be a good idea. I can't imagine at any point that slapping a guy like that.
Listen, he doesn't like being told what to do anyways.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like that too. I don't like people telling me what to do. So I get it, So, but that's, yeah. I mean, if but I can. If Shock wasn't doing something, I could be firm with him, and he would adjust. I mean, it's he'll definitely. I think he respects me, and I think he'll adjust if I ask him to do something.
Yeah. Well, and you had said before. I think this is a great point. Like. It's so obvious, when a guy's yelling all the time, when that's his, like, he's at 70 miles an hour as a trainer all the time, it sort of becomes noise. If a guy like you gets up and yells at the fighter, they know it's for real, like there's a certain dynamic to it.
Yeah. You're shocked, right? Like, oh crap, something must be really going wrong, right? Because Bobby's always calm, and now he's losing his mind. Yeah.
No, there's definitely. I think there's definitely like a spectrum to that. What is, a lot of different trainers will have a banner in their gym. It's sort of like what their motivational slogan is, or it's something that they'll always say. Do you have a banner like that, or is there a specific term that you use regularly with your fighters?
No, not really. I mean, we have on the wall, it says no excuses, just solutions. But not really. I mean, I got some stuff I always, like my dad used to tell me, and I use it today, is it'll feel better when it stops hurting.
That's a good one.
I use it with the fighters. The guys are like, oh, my arm. I'm like, yeah, it'll feel better when it stops hurting. And they kind of look at me like, what's he talking about?
The idea behind that, of course, is, fight through it. Like, it'll go.
Yeah.
It'll pass.
Yeah.
You were in a position where obviously there were so many great trainers around you, and you could learn from so many great trainers. One thing I always like to do before ending this is asking if there's a new trainer, a young new trainer who's just getting started, and they have their first fighter, an amateur, and they want to learn all they can. They want to be a sponge. What advice would you give them in getting into this game?
Listen. Just be quiet and listen. Because that's the easiest thing. Because it's these guys, these young guys, and I see it now. They want to talk. They want to know. They want to act like they know something really, really fast. And I'm like, Listen, I was 20 years in before I could even say anything. So it's just different. Times are different. Especially like the trainers, the great trainers that were around when I was a kid. Um, it wasn't a lot of hand pad work. It wasn't. Now you got a fancy mitt guy. He's a great trainer. I'm like, why? What makes him a great trainer? Like, because he can do hand pads? Like,
Yeah.
but it's kind of turned into that. If you can't throw a 30, 40 punch combination on the pads, you're not a great trainer. And back then, it wasn't a lot of that.
That's a common one. Almost every really successful trainer has said the same thing about the hand pads. Although I'll call it out. I think for better or for worse, that was Floyd and his dad and then his uncle. It's they found out how to make training look really flashy in a way where, and now like with social media, it looks nice, but it's not. There's a difference between training and looking good for a camera.
It's not realistic.
Yeah.
Guy throws a 40 punch combination. The fight's over. It's not going. Guy lands 10, 12 shots. I mean, in a row, and it doesn't respond. The fight's over. It's the ref's going to stop the fight.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Coach, I appreciate you so much. Thanks for joining me. I love your disposition, your calmness. I hope that people can watch this and take a lot from it because I think there are just so many gems of wisdom that you've shared. And I just want to say thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome, Coach. Thank you.
Anytime, man. Let me know.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, bud.